everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. And before I get going, I really want to, give a massive thank you, to those that subscribe. And I really appreciate the likes and the comments that you've been leaving. From the bottom of my heart, without your general support, I wouldn't be here. So I really want to say a massive, massive thank you. So before we get going, what's the purpose of this video? I've decided that this video is all about me breaking down my walls and allowing you guys into my world to understand a bit more about myself. So I want to strip everything back and start from the very, very beginning. So my father is Chinese and my mother is Vietnamese. My father, who's an engineer, was contracted to come over to Vietnam to build bridges. And it was there that he met my mother. My mother fell madly in love with him, and they both decided to get married and set up home in a small place called Lang Son, which was right in the middle between the border of China and Vietnam. Together, they went on to have 6 children. My mother was an entrepreneur at that point in her life. She was just importing and exporting goods. And my father continued to be an engineer, working in government jobs. And life was good for them. Until one day, there was news that China was planning to invade Vietnam. And that war was going to break out. And because of this, my mother decided to get her children ready to send to my grandmother, who's living, in a very small village in Vietnam. So she did. So she got the 4 of us ready and she took us there for safety. And her plan was to come back to get the last bit of her belongings together with my father and my youngest sister at the time, because she was still a baby. So that they can then go to where my grandmother was to be with us. But on the day that they were leaving, that's when the Chinese invaded and came in to attack Vietnam. And that's when the war broke out. We were further away to be with our grandmother. We was further away. But because they was living in this Lang Son with the border between Vietnam, that's when the war took place. The Chinese had come over, war broke out, everything was madness. My father got shot in the back. My mother, she was running loose goose, like madness, she says. My mother would say that, friends were dying. They could see their friends being shot. My father lost his mum in the war, and they got captured. And they got captured by the Chinese, and they got taken away to camp. We, as my eldest sister, my brother, my 2 brothers, and myself, we were left to stay with our grandmother, to be away from the war. To be honest with you guys, we didn't really know what was going on. All that we knew was our parent was gonna come back for us, and that for the time being we was gonna stay with my grandmother and my aunts and uncle. That's all that we knew. But as time went by, of course, there was no sign of my mother and my father coming. We didn't have any news whether or not they were coming or going. So everybody presumed that they were dead. That was it. We had to accept life with the fact that our parent was dead, and that we will now have to settle into the idea of living with our grandmother and our aunts and uncle. That was it. I was only 4 at the time, and I was so scared. Not knowing where my mother and my father was, being left with complete strangers, because all in honesty, we lived that so far away from my grandmother. We didn't really get to see them like every weekend, let's say. So, for us, it was just like strangers. I could remember, I could remember crying a lot. If I could be really honest with you, I could remember crying a lot, asking for my mother, not knowing where my mother was, didn't understand what it meant that they were dead, because I was only 4. I was only 4 at the time. I became very clingy to my grandmother. I was clinging on to her for dear life, you know. I would cry every time that she would leave me. I would cry if she'd ever left me to go somewhere. You know, I would cry if she left the room. I would always remember just crying a lot, you know, being very, very clingy. And that has affected me, to be honest. My childhood then has affected me. Yes, so my brother, my sister and I, when we was living with my grandmother, life was very tough. We was living in a very small village, and there was a lot of flooding going on. There was a lot of flooding, a lot of hurricanes and a lot of flooding. And people were starving, hungry. There was a lot of like hungry people. And when the flood took place, there was a lot of people dying. When the water had gone, you can see, you know, I remember like people talking about, you know, people being like, from, you know, being taken, you know, being like, because somebody had died, you know, and it was terrible. Life at that time was terrible, you know, separated from our parent, not knowing when we're going to meet them, if we would ever meet them again, being brought up by my aunts and uncle and my grandmother. I remember my big sister being forced to work at a very young age. My two brothers were really left to fend for themselves. I was the youngest out of the 4. I was only 4 years old at the time. I was very clingy, you know, very, very clingy, a very clingy child, really scared, really clingy because, of course, of the separation and the anxiety that I was facing. I'm not going to lie, my grandmother isn't the best caretaker in the world. And yes, the only best decision she ever made was the fact that when, you know, this very well-dressed man came into the village and he proposed the idea to my grandmother that if she would agree on the idea of selling the four of us, that he would pay a great lump sum of money. Thank God at the time she refused. And her answer to his question was, look, if I must die hungry, these 4, they will die with me. We are not to be separated, and that we was to stay together. And because of her decision, we are now still all together, thank God. However, life, like I said, was very tough for the 4 of us. There was a lot of emotional abuse. There was a lot of physical abuse, being hit a lot. And just being badly brought up, you know. Not telling a child when you're going to be back or where you're going or how long causes a lot of anxiety. And I was that child. I was the child that was so clingy, holding on to my grandmother's leg, you know, not really wanting to let her go because I'd already lost my parent. Now, if I was to lose her, I would have been lost, kind of thing. So I became a very, very clingy child. And I believe that my childhood experience then has really affected me as an adult now. So, guys, I really want to end today's video because obviously the airtime, I don't get that much time because it's only 15 minutes. I will, I will continue to, upload more videos on my journey to there and now, so that you guys will have a better understanding of who I am and how I've got to this point here today. Thank you for your general support. Without your support, without you subscribing, without you liking and commenting to my video, I would not be here today. So a massive thank you to all of you. Bye for now. Bye guys, and I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you for watching. Bye.